Okay, hello everyone. This is Shauna, your tax goddess. You have no idea how excited I am to be here today with the very fabulous Jonathan Morrison. Jonathan is an expert, a top-notch expert, both California and Arizona in estate, trust, and probate law. And we're here today to talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. Jonathan's field here is to look at things like gift trusts and estate planning and generation skipping trusts and family limited partnerships. And I could go on and on and on, but I have an odd feeling that Jonathan will do a much better job at telling us all of his fantasticness outside of me. So Jonathan, tomorrow's the election. Today is November 2nd. Tomorrow's the election. What do we need to panic about?
Yeah. Well, I suppose there's a lot to panic about. We're not really sure what might go through if, all this is assuming that there's a Biden win. And we'll talk about if there's a Trump win, still a possibility of tax reform. But a lot of the panic right now is if there is a Biden win or a blue wave and a Democratic sweep of the House and Congress generally, what does that mean? So President or possibly President Biden has already signaled a number of items that he'd like to push through in a tax reform. And I think a lot of people are talking about the income tax changes. So there's a lot of talk about the elimination of the capital gains rate, right? So right now, if you sell your business or some highly appreciated real estate, you enjoy a 20%, or it's actually about 23.8% capital gains rate. That would now go up to closer to 40%. It's almost doubling of that rate. So a lot of our clients are rushing to sell businesses, sell real estate before that capital gains rate might go up. Now, on my end, what I do for a living is high-end estate tax planning. So this is, very wealthy families or business owners that have the problem of a death tax, right? So right now there's the 40% death tax that actually applies above a certain exemption amount. So not everybody knows that, if you pass away with, $1 billion and you haven't done any planning, well, a check
government has their hand out.
Yes, literally within 9 months date of death,
yep,
or the second spouse's death, there's a check for $400 million that has to be written. And so the good news is, the federal estate tax is relatively easy to plan for if you have enough time and you're proactive. And so, unfortunately, a lot of clients don't like to talk about death and taxes, but the clients that come in and get to us when they're younger or before the value of their company is taken off, there's really a lot of things we can do to minimize or even zero out that death tax without giving up a whole lot of control in terms of assets that have to be gifted. So
I think there's some really big picture stuff here. So let me back up. The downsides to Jonathan and I being on a telephone call is that we talk tax, estate, partnership. We talk this all day long, every minute of every day. So we're in it every minute of every day. But for those of you that are here, you're just trying to learn, you're trying to figure out what's going on in the world, even if you're a business owner and you know that maybe you should have been talking to a planner, but, Jonathan, you hit the nail on the head. I'm never going to die. I'm never going to die. It'll be fine. My heirs will figure it out when I'm dead. So let's talk about some of the basics. Right now, the estate tax exemption is 11.58 million, right?
per person, that's right.
Per person. Okay, so this is a great question here then. So if we're married, if husband and wife, so we actually get 2 times 11.58 million.
That's right now.
Okay. So right now, being the key word there, right? Tomorrow that might totally change. So, okay, so we get 2 times 11.58. If I'm single, I get 11.58. Fine. What I find, Jonathan, is that a lot of people don't really realize what kind of assets add into this 11.58 million. A lot of people are thinking, well, I can have 11 million in cash, so this isn't a problem for me. What kind of assets are going to go into that 11.58 million?
Yeah, so how it works is when a client dies, if they're over that exemption amount, or we believe they might be over the exemption amount, we literally have to get an appraisal of everything, including the company shares, IRAs, life insurance. If it's not inside of a special life insurance trust, that gets added in. So we have to report the value to the government within 9 months of death of everything that's owned, every single asset, and we add it all up. And we try to be as aggressive as we can and conservative as in terms of the value. But yeah, it's everything that's owned, including the business.
And so you're picking the big assets. We're talking even down to some of the little things. Do you have artwork in your house? What about your cars? What about the jewelry that your spouse is wearing, right? I mean, we're talking all the way down to the little things, right?
Right. Everything. Yeah.
Okay. So everything here does not mean kind of everything. We mean everything. Guys, as you know, if the government wants a handout and they want their 40%, they are going to look for every penny that you have, right? So, okay, fine. So we have 11.58 million. Now, let me give an example. So right now, I'm young, the Joys, okay? I'm young. My business is worth, I don't know, 7 million. Let's say it's worth 7 million, right? I'm single, so I have until 11 million, Jonathan, right? So why do I care? I mean, I've got another like 4 or 5 million before I have to worry about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's probably true right now. If you're going with the assumption that we're always going to have this huge exemption. So just to back up, 20 years ago with Bush, the exemption was only 600,000 per person. And then it went up to 1 million, and then mid 2000s, 2 million. Obama, it was about 3.5, and then went up to 5 million by the time of his end of his presidency. Trump doubled it in 2017 to 10 million. And then with inflation, we're at 11.5 per spouse. But before, 20 years ago, it was always 600,000 per person. And so we have this huge exemption that's just crescendoed and gone crazy and was doubled by Trump. And it's kind of gotten out of control from the perspective of, the mantra is sort of tax the rich right now. And there's this wealth disparity. And I think if we get any kind of democratic control in there, I've been surprised that there hasn't been more talk on the news about this estate tax exemption getting so high and families like, Trump benefiting. I mean, I think at some point that's going to be that this is going to be discovered by the media that this exemption's out of control, especially if we get to tax reform. Even if Trump wins and there's Republicans control, we've got to pay for all of this trillions of COVID relief, right? And so I think at some point it's safe to bet that these exemptions are going to come down. By the way, if nothing happens in 2026, President Trump's tax reform of 2017 expires and the exemptions get cut in half. So we kind of are in this golden age of gift and estate tax planning because we have this huge exemption amount that can be actually used by making gifts. You don't have to wait until death, which we'll get into. And we've got these ultra low interest rates where we can leverage them in a lot of ways, leverage the exemption in a lot of ways. So it's really never going to get any better than probably right now for purposes of trying to minimize, estate taxes through some proactive planning.
So, one of the things that you mentioned, and I hear this a ton from my business owners, is listen, of course I want my kids to have, I really don't want to give them money. Why would I just hand over 40%? However, my kids are too young. Maybe I've got a bad seed. I don't really trust them a whole lot. Can they kick me out of my house if I give them control of all my assets, right? I'm now penniless on the street. I had this $12 million company, whatever it is. So what are some of the considerations for somebody that's nervous about doing estate planning this way? What other kinds of options do we have?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we have this urgency to use these exemptions, okay? And we'll talk about the gift trust, is what you're getting at, is how do we properly retain control and access? But the issue is that Biden has signaled returning to historic norms in 2021. And that tax reform, if it goes through, there's precedent for it being retroactive to January 1st of 2021. In other words, in about 2 months, we could be going over the cliff if you don't use your exemption, and there's 2021 tax reform. Good news, IRS has told us, hey, if you use the exemption by gifting before the law changes, you're in the clear. So we have, I'm in the middle right now of about 25 transactions for 25 different families where we're using up, 11 and a half for a single person or 23 for a married couple in order to benefit from that. So you ask, okay, well, we don't want to just gift $23 million to our kids. And most families can't afford to make that kind of gift. So what do we do? Well, the good news is you can make gifts. And, we're not talking about cash. We're typically talking about gifts of real estate or shares in the company. But a well-drafted and well-architected gift trust, and it goes by a lot of names, idiots and slats and effective grantor trust and dynasty trust. It's all the same thing. These are well-drafted gift trusts that give the clients a lot of control and access over the gifted assets, okay? And the tax code allows for a good amount of control and flexibilities and access. But the IRS has lost a lot of cases over the last 30, 40 years in the world of gift and estate tax, to the point where we can give a lot of powers to the clients directly, especially married couples. And we can also give a lot of powers to what we call a trust protector, which is a close friend or non-immediate family member that can have even more powers that the tax code won't directly allow the gifting client to have. And so we could go into some of these powers, but really, well-designed gift trust is going to allow the clients to really retain full control and access during life, in either directly or indirectly.
So mom does not have to worry about being kicked out of her house by a bad seed child. There's a set of controls and a set of protection in there for the owners, for the parents, for whoever it is that's doing the gifting. Okay, really good. And guys, if you didn't pick up on that, Jonathan said the same phrase at least 6 times: a well-drafted trust. Okay, as with any other legal document, okay, this is not something that you guys should be doing on LegalZoom. Okay, these are some big, serious issues, and so I hope that whoever did it, did you hear the laugh? Right? No LegalZoom. So I hope that if you're out there listening to this, that you are working with a professional. Okay, there are pitfalls, there are loopholes, so there's positives and negatives all the way through them. And Jonathan, as I understand it, if you put the wrong word in one section of your trust, that could either blow the whole gift, that could lose control for the owners. I mean, when you talk well drafted, I mean, you're talking down to the word.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not just the trust document itself, but the design, the type of assets, how it's reported. I mean, this type of work, this type of planning, I personally draft all of my own documents when it comes to this. We call this advanced planning. My firm, we're the largest trust and estate firm in Arizona. There's only a couple of attorneys that competently handle high net worth advanced planning like this. I mean, there's probably only 10 attorneys in the state of Arizona that really can competently do this very well and are known for doing it very well. It just takes a lot of repetitions. It takes a lot of, you have to understand the tax code backward and forward. There's just so many ways that you can mess it up. They call it the neurosurgery of the law for a reason, So you really need, even, I see a lot of business clients that come to me that had their wills done by their corporate attorney, which is a bad idea. Or this type of advanced planning done by an attorney that does basic wills and trust, and probate attorney. You really have to have a specialist for this type of planning. Otherwise, it's just not, it's not worth the paper that it's written on.
And especially as you're saying right now, guys, if you're married and you're talking about going from a $23 million exemption to a $10 million exemption, that difference, that $13 million exemption because the document was wrong or because you waited until January 1st of 2021, $13 million, and I'm going to use 50% going to the government. I know it's 40%, but $6.5 million, guys. This is a ton of money for you to lose from your heirs. Now, one thing that I have to question. So, for example, you said that you're here in Arizona. You're in Arizona. I know that you personally can also do California. Do you think that it's smart for somebody who's got these kind of issues to work with a specialist in their state or their state issues as well?
Yeah, there are state issues. Arizona itself, each state has its own set of trust laws, and those trust laws can be extremely favorable or really bad. So, for example, I practiced in Silicon Valley for 10 years. The California laws are really not attractive at all. And so we were oftentimes setting up our gift trusts in states like Delaware and Nevada, where they've specifically made the trust laws very flexible. For example, in California, a trust can only live for 90 years. And so if you're putting a significant tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into these trusts, they have to terminate in 90 years. That exposes all the assets to death tax of grandchildren or great-grandchildren, exposes those assets to divorcing spouses and creditors of grandchildren. Whereas in Delaware, there's an unlimited trust life, or in Arizona, we have 500 years. So that's just one example of many where you really want to you do need to consider the trust laws of the state where you live, and if they're not good, then you need to go set it up elsewhere, which means hiring a trust company in that state. So fortunately, in Arizona where I practice, we have great trust laws, so we can actually just keep it here at home, and it's nice and easy.
I only hope that my legacy is 500 years out. That would be awesome. So, okay. So what are some of the other, panic issues, like real human issues that are coming up? Because, from what I'm gathering, listening to you, right, you do this all day, in and out, backwards and forwards, right? So for you, you're like, listen, we're just going to organize it. We're going to structure it. You're going to do a set of tasks. You're going to do these things. There's nothing to panic about, right? This is what we're going to do. But I have no doubt in my mind, Jonathan, that you have people coming into your office literally freaking out. Right? So what are some of the most common panic type issues, like really human emotion type stuff that comes up with?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now I would say that the deals that I'm working on aren't panicking yet. I think the panic's going to come after this election, when every CPA and investment advisor in the state says, run to me or the other 10 attorneys that do this work.
Right.
And a good amount of attorneys have already, closed their doors. I think that's going to be happening soon for all of us in a few weeks, probably, because we can only service so many clients. But in terms of the emotions, I think that it's scary to gift this much away. And so, I think, for me, at least, I'll tell you, I have really good materials and overviews that explain, here's exactly how this is going to work. Yeah, you're gifting $11.5 million, but here's all of the strings that you're going to have attached. You're going to be able to control the investments of the trust. You're going to be able to borrow from the trust at the low 1% rate that the IRS gives us right now. You can swap assets of equivalent value. If there's cash you want to get out, you can put a house in there and take the cash back. We can give the trust protector the ability to gift assets back to you in the future if you ever need it. That can add some risk, but that's a great power. Married couples, we can do similar things like that. So once clients get comfortable with, okay, here's all the strings and powers that I have with some measured risk, that can be fine-tuned later if you want to reduce some risk and reduce control, that gets them more comfortable. So I think that, when I first suggest making this large of gifts to clients, they say, oh my gosh, I'd never do that. But then when they really understand, here's how the gift trust works, here are the authorities that allow for this. In my world, this is 101 level stuff, but most clients, this is really complex, and some of them that can't even believe that you can have this much power over these trusts. So I think it's about educating and giving good materials to clients before they pull the trigger or sign on the dotted line.
Which I really like, because I'm with you. Listen, if you're not comfortable doing whatever you're doing, whether you're talking about a $23 million trust or whether you're talking about a $2 million trust, okay? Because we haven't even really talked about the other side of this. Of course, with the election tomorrow, everything is really focused on the loss of this estate exemption potentially here at the end of the year. But there's a whole separate side of this, which is, in most cases, we're not talking about a $23 million trust. We're talking about a smaller family that maybe has $5 million. Well, if the exemption drops to 5.79 or whatever, okay, fine, you're still maybe okay. But what about the growth in your business? That might push you over. What about a drop in 4 years from now to a much lower $1 million state tax exemption? Because we do have to pay for COVID, all the money that's being spent for COVID, right? What about control for bad seed children, right? You want to pass on your money to your heirs, but you're worried that even at 60, they can't control their spending or something like that, right? So there's other things that need to be considered as well, just even outside of just this estate exemption. I know we only have you for another 9 minutes, Jonathan. So what other types of considerations need to go into this overarching planning for a family?
Yeah, great questions. I think other considerations. So yeah, well-drafted gift trust gives really no powers to children or anybody until the death of the client. So, my trust has a mechanism where either one spouse, or if it's a single person, a trust protector can disinherit children or give more to grandchildren or even give it to charity. So we have these mechanisms that allow for fine-tuning over the lifetime. So the important point is, I deal with 20 somethings in Silicon Valley with 9-figure estates where we're setting up gift trusts and they don't have family to give to. But the point, we got to get it out before those shares IPO or the business takes off. So again, well-drafted gift trust has mechanisms for all of these things. But I can't tell you, I'd say 8 or 9 gift trusts out of 10 that I review don't have these mechanisms. They're outdated. So we have to go to court to change them, which means giving notice to children. And I do a lot of cleanup work of poorly drafted irrevocable planning. So it's really important to get it on the front end right. But other considerations, where's the business going, right? This exemption, if it goes away and you're left with, we're expecting 3.5 per person or 7 for a married couple, then, if your company goes up to 50 million, 100 million, we can only gift a certain amount. Beyond that, there's other things we can do, but it makes my job a lot harder when a client walks in with a $100 million estate and a $3.5 million exemption. At that point, I need a lot of time. I need about 20 years for a number of reasons to really minimize that death tax through a number of other mechanisms. But if the best time to come is when before the company takes off, we don't have to use the full 11.5. Let's use some of it. Let's seed that gift trust, maybe some shares in the company. If the company takes off, we've at least got a good portion out, and we can get some more into that trust through some other ways. But really, it's important to think about, where do you think your company might be going? Where's your estate going? If you're on the threshold, let's get in some amount of gift. You can still borrow it. You can still borrow from that trust. We got 1% per year fixed rate right now the IRS gives us. Thank you, COVID. We have a lot of clients that are over gifting with the plan to borrow back some of the funds next year, lock it in at 1%. Essentially, hey, I'll promise to gift that later, but in the meantime, I'm going to feed the trust 1% interest per year. It's nothing. Yeah. So other aspects are creditor protection. When you make a gift to a gift trust, the secondary benefit is creditor protection. Creditor protection trusts and estate planning trusts really go hand in hand. If you're making a gift to a gift trust, it's also out of your estate for creditors, lawsuits, future marriage and divorce, or even a bankruptcy down the road. So, I think, if clients are around 10 million or more, I would start to think about at least gifting something, maybe before the end of the year, especially if 20 million plus. But yeah, you got to think about where your company's going, where your estate's going, and get ahead of it.
For sure. For sure. And I love how you say, maybe start thinking about it. Guys, if you didn't pick up on that earlier, Jonathan was talking about him and the other specialists here in the state of Arizona potentially closing their doors to new clients in the next, 2 weeks if Biden gets in, because things are going to be a little busy. So if you're anywhere close, I wouldn't wait. Make some calls, okay? Call Mr. Jonathan here. Okay, make some calls. So, but besides the point, last question that I have, Jonathan, are there any types of assets or types of things that should not go into a trust?
Well, into a gift trust, yeah. So everybody should have a will and a revocable living trust. That's basically like your will. It's too bad that they call that a trust, because we're talking about a gift trust. And so I think your question was, what are assets you shouldn't put into a specialized gift trust?
Yes.
Yeah, you're usually looking for assets that have high appreciation potential, right? So we're trying to get assets within the gift exemption and then leverage it by letting those trust assets grow over time, over the client's lifetime. But you can't put retirement assets in there. You can't transfer your IRA or your 401k. That's not permitted. Assets that you should be putting in are life insurance. That's the first one. If a client comes to me with 10 million and they've got a $8 million policy, the first thing we're doing is gifting that insurance out of the estate, right? That's low-hanging fruit. It's very easy to get out of the estate. But if you do nothing, that's subject to the 40% death tax. That's added in there, right? So let's get life insurance out. Let's gift highly appreciating business or real estate. It's generating much income.
Stock.
Stock in business, stock in, and then some attorneys would say don't put your home in there or vacation property. You can't do that. There's a tax code that says a section that says if you gift assets to the trust and you still use it, like you're still living in the home, then it's unsuccessful. It's still part of your estate, right? But you're still enjoying it. But there's an exception if you have fair market value rent, right? So we'll take very valuable residences and then lease them back with a full lease agreement with updated rent every year. That's a great play for getting not only the house out, but all those rental payments are transferring out. So I wouldn't say there's really any bad assets to put in. There's just more optimal assets than others. And again, we can, through the swap power, we can start with cash. Like we have a lot of clients that are just gifting cash or stocks and bonds, with the idea of next year, we're going to swap out some more attractive assets, take out the cash of 11 million and put 11 million of company stock or real estate. They just say, hey, I don't have time to deal with it, Jonathan. I just want to use my exemption, lock it in, and we'll fine tune the assets next year. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas.
Well, and it's really, really helpful, again, that you do have so much control and so many options here. This is not just whatever's in there is now trapped in the little box of the gift trust. You do have flexibility and control and options. And
that's
awesome.
Right. Yeah, if it's well drafted. That's right.
I think now you've said that in 13.
Yeah.
I don't know. A well-drafted trust. I love it. All right, guys. So, Jonathan, what is the one question that I did not ask that we absolutely need to come up before?
Well, you touched on a bunch. I think what happens if you do all this planning and Trump wins, or because with mail-in ballots we might not know. We have a lot of clients that are doing this gifting and expect maybe they might not even know by the end of the year who wins. And so again, if you structured this and architected it properly, there's mechanisms to be able to get the assets back that maybe you over gifted, or maybe you did this planning and you don't need it down the road, which I don't expect. Again, exemptions have to come down at some point through legislation, or in 2026, the default is these exemptions are going down. So I think you're going to need this planning, but worst case, you do it and you over gifted, you want to get it back. Again, if you architected it, designed it well, we've got the ability to be able to take it back or borrow the funds. So yeah, I think that's the biggie. If Trump wins, or if there's a, the Republicans hold, again, either way, if you did it right, you've got escape hatches.
Love it. Love it. So guys, as I always say, do it right, do it early, and get on top of it to get done, because you never know. So, okay, completely beside the point. When do you think we're going to know? Do you have any clue? Any thoughts on when you think we might actually know who our president is?
I have no idea. I only know as much as on the Today Show when I'm walking out the door to go to work. My wife has it on, and they're talking about it. So I'm working 24/7 right now.
Don't I know how you
feel? News.
I love it. Well, guys, I guess we'll find out here soon. Maybe we'll find out. In the meantime, if you guys are looking at estate, at trusts, at planning, whether it's going to be over the exemption or under the exemption, Tax Goddess has worked with Jonathan Morris for a very long time. He is a fantastic resource. I'm sure if you guys have questions, it might be quite a delay for you to get any kind of answers because of how busy he is. But Jonathan Morrison can be reached. Of course, we'll make sure to post your information, Jonathan. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Any last parting words?
Oh, no, thank you. No, this has been great. I appreciate it. And all the best for 2021.
Cheers to that. All right, everyone, have a great day, and we'll see y'all later. Thanks.